welcome to my channel. Today you can find me driving a Mercedes Benz 560SL. This is one of my personal vehicles. I often don't take it out because of its increasing value, but more than that, at the end of the day it's just a car. But it's not just any car, it's a 560SL. And the 560SL has a very rich history within the Mercedes Benz nomenclature. The R107 was the code name given by Mercedes Benz during its run from 1972 to 1989. Now, normally cars have a refreshment cycle of maybe 4 years before they switch up the body style, they switch up the chassis, probably because of safety regulations that have been part of the regular cycle that cars are definitely acclimated to these days. But during the 1970s and the 1980s, cars lasted a pretty long time. Now, from 1972, when the car was the beginning of its cycle, it was the first of the Mercedes Benzes to have a V8 engine. They shoehorned the V8 from the power plant of the W108 and the W109 chassis, and they shoved it in and shoehorned it into a sports car, which pretty much just says this is going to be a lot of fun. Normally, the SL model was a straight inline 6-cylinder engine that had very good performance. It was one of those vehicles that always performed well, but it could never keep up with the likes of Porsche, it could never keep up with the likes of Ferrari, and that was its main competitors at the time. So by having a V8 engine placed into the engine bay of a sports car, it pretty much gave a different, it catapulted the Mercedes Benz coupe into a different ballgame. It catapulted into a different category. Now this vehicle is the 560SL. It was produced in 1988, but the first 560SL came out in 1986, 87, and then the final iterations came out in 1988 and 1989. 88 and 89 being the most powerful because they pretty much gave the engine 227 horsepower with about 250 pounds-feet of torque. These are estimates, of course, but if you ask any Mercedes mechanic, they say that the real power output is closer to 250 horsepower and roughly 300 horsepower. And when I actually press on the pedal, I could see that the performance that my mechanic raves about, he isn't lying. The 560SL also makes it different from earlier models like the 350SL, which had the smaller engine, the 3.5 liter V8. And it makes it different from the 450SL because that's a 4.5 liter V8. The 560SL is a little bit different because not only did it have a double wishbone suspension, but it also had something that was very desirable and highly desirable within everyone looking for additional performance when it came to these cars. And that is a limited slip differential. The 560L came with a limited slip differential, and it changed the performance and the driving dynamics completely. The suspension geometry was a little bit different. Everything changed, and it made it a much better car. It made it a little bit more trustworthy on the road, and it made it a direct competitor to cars like the Porsche 928, which came out around 4 years earlier. So in order to compete with the market and in order to address the new demands of the consumer, which was mostly in America, they needed to come up with something that was going to definitely put them at the forefront of engineering. And that's the difference between a lot of the V8 engines that were being produced in Germany in comparison to those being produced in the United States. The ones in Germany, they were obsessed over engineering. They were obsessed with the detail. And the attention to detail and the high regard for quality is what separated them from everyone else. If you look at the typical V8 engine coming out of America, you had V8s in Cadillacs, which at the time Cadillac had developed a two-seater similar to this one, but it was not successful because they used inferior parts from lesser models. Whereas Mercedes, they spent a lot of money in the engineering to make sure that this vehicle would be the best possible version of their car. They had very specific parts designed for each and every component within the braking system or the suspension system, or even within the engine. There was a lot of bespoke qualities to all of these cars when they were produced. But this is not your typical sports car. This is a car that is designed for the boulevard. It was designed to be an Autobahn beast. It was a car that could hold 140 miles an hour all day long. And the speedometer indicates 165, but no one's really going that speed at all because government regulations prevent any car from going above 155 in Germany. And at the time when speedometers in the United States only reached 85 miles per hour, that just tells you the story that nobody was ever going that fast. But this car is a wonderful vehicle. It definitely is reliable. It's the perfect date night car. It's the car you want to take out on the street at night and just go for a slow cruise. And if you notice, I've been driving around my neighborhood and I'm going slowly. I'm not pushing this car further than 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, because it's meant to be driven slow. It's meant to be a car that will cruise. Now, Mercedes Benz at the time, luxury. The luxury is about the quality. It's not about the opulence of touchscreens. I mean, if I look around me, the radio is a Becker unit. Becker was high quality back in the 80s, but compared to today's standards, it's nothing special. It's a Becker cassette unit. Now, a lot of you watching this video may not even know what a cassette is, but it was basically a very bad system for listening to music. But it's nostalgic and it's kind of cool. The air conditioning system, I will say the Americans definitely made better air conditioning systems than the Germans, because we have such a varying rates of climates all across the United States. You have different temperate zones all across California, Nevada, where you have extreme heat down south and humidity, so you have to address many concerns with the American market. Whereas in Germany, you have pretty much a single climate type depending on the location you're in. And it speaks to the quality because this is like a whack-a-mole system where it's like a push-button start. And it works because I made it work. And when it comes to my vehicles, I want to make sure everything works. It's not the greatest quality air conditioning, but it does the job. But if we speak about the quality and the fit and finish of these vehicles, if we think about every other vehicle coming out at the time during the 1980s, everything was made out of inferior plastics. The cloth interior upholsteries weren't very good. Mercedes Benz was producing cloth upholstery, but they were of the richest velvets that you could possibly find. But if we look at this interior, we have the burled walnut veneer along the center console. We have a very beautiful blue leather interior, full leather. It's not just the leather facing, but you also have leather on the underside of the seat, leather on the back of the seat. There's leather everywhere. And the vinyls that are used are very sturdy and resistant to cracking. I mean, I look at my dashboard, and for 30 years, 31 years, it has completely lasted and has been extremely durable. Then again, I take extreme care of my cars. Now, when this car came out, I picked it up. I was not able to pick it up new because I was only a child at the time. But when this car came out new, the sticker price was north of $60,000, which in today's money is roughly $125,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. $125,000 for the finest engineering, you're actually getting good quality. Now in the used car market, these things are going up exponentially. On the used car market, you could find anything from roughly $15,000 all the way north, $120,000 for a car that's in concours condition. Now my car is a driver. I drive the daylights out of this thing because, well, it's a car. It's meant to be driven. It's got 4 wheels, it's got a steering wheel, it's got a accelerator, and it's got a brake. If I don't use it, the internals are gonna rust out, and I don't want to see that happen to this car. So I use this car to its maximum potential. I take it out on weekends during the summer. For periods when it's not raining, it becomes my daily driver. And it's quite a looker for a daily driver, especially when you drive it past Times Square and people don't look at the skyscrapers, they look at you. So if you don't want to attract attention, this is not the car that you take out. This is not the car that you naturally blend in. Ah, it's a 560 right there. And that's a sedan, the SEL. So thank you for riding along with me. It's been a pleasure.